Wonderful. And with that, we're recording. So we'll go ahead up the agenda. Looks like, Alex, you have the first issue.
Yes. So I was looking through open issues when looking at stuff for this milestone, and we have some issues there that are quite outdated. Things over 6 months old, 10 months old. Some of them referencing our previous BI tool. Some of them referencing things that have already been merged, possibly in different issues. So I was wondering what our process should be for old, outdated issues so that our board remains relevant. And I was proposing, should we automatically close things that we haven't looked at or edited past 10 months, maybe 6, or should we have a process in our milestone planning where any issue more than 6 months old gets reviewed and potentially closed? Thoughts?
I have some. I don't necessarily need to go first, but can. I think we definitely want to go through and take things out that are out of date from an obsolescence standpoint. I think we should feel comfortable with a long backlog. I think that is sort of one of the truths that comes with open source mentalities, is you have this long trail of stuff that, hey, you might like to get to, but it doesn't reflect your priorities right now. And we shouldn't be afraid to keep those things around. Obviously, if they're relevant to a tool we no longer have, get rid of it. But I don't like just blanket time-based pieces. I think, though, it does create a little bit of noise, but I think if we have effective labeling, we can manage that stuff. And it does require some grooming. Otherwise, sort of as you reference, if there's stuff that's totally obsolete, like that becomes no longer a library of things we can look into to see, but it's instead just a bunch of noise. So I don't know. That's my go-to there.
Walter, a clarifying question. You said if it mentioned our old BI tool, we should ditch it. But what I'm guessing you meant was like, if it's specific to that BI tool and not just a report we should produce in our current BI tool, correct?
Yeah. Obviously, if it translates to, like, if we change this one word and the thing is totally valid, we should probably just do that, right?
That's what I figured. Just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, no, for sure. Common sense needs to apply, but we should still talk about it. Thank you.
Then instead of auto closing, should we incorporate something in the milestone planning process where we groom things more than 6 months old? There will be a first batch initially, but I just want to make sure that we separate the signal from the noise, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. We either need to dedicate some time and just start chipping away, which I'm fine with, just adding it to the milestone planning agenda. Since we don't have I don't think we particularly have a grooming specific meeting, which is the other way to do this. Yeah, we'll have to carve out the time. I don't think that it, just like I'm kind of comfortable with a long trail, like I'm comfortable with us just starting to clean it up. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, let's just add a little time to that milestone planning agenda to clear things out. The truth is, we can sit down and just, if everyone on that call took 10 minutes and did it, actually, we'd get this done pretty quick.
Cool. All right. So then I'll propose in an MRA for the milestone planning process that for the next planning and review session, we take a few minutes to groom old issues, and it'll take probably a couple of meetings to get it up to speed, but
cool. Thank you. So unless there's anything else there, I think I've got the next item here, just around data validation and peer review. So I know this is in our documentation. This is a thing that we all maybe think about doing. It's not a thing we're universally doing. And I want to stress that that's a piece that we absolutely need to be doing. From my perspective, it's not a failure if we catch something on the way out the door. It's absolutely a failure if a customer catches it. And it's on us, the analyst, to make sure that we are reaching out for that peer review and following our own processes. we shouldn't rely on other people to check us in terms of adhering to the process. We need their attention on what we're actually putting out. I think I've worked in shops where this is a common practice and where it is not. And we have this as a way we go about doing things here, and it's not a piece we should lose, because the difference is quite apparent in drift on numbers, the accuracy of data. It turns out, actually, if you don't talk to each other about the output, it will drift, and it's just inevitable. So we need to make sure we're still doing that. Our processes rely on it, our structures rely on it, and we're not going to be able to manage compliance through data in the way that we need to if we can't adhere to those. And so I just want to stress the importance of this and make sure we're doing it. And like I said, it's not a failure if we catch it. It's a failure if they catch it. So just a little, I don't know if that was so much a discussion as like, it could be, if anyone had anything they wanted to add, but if not, that's all I had.
Great. Looks like I have the next couple things. So the first is around the Okta rollout. You may have seen this on the company call agenda today, but Periscope will be rolling over to Okta only logins effective Thursday evening East Coast time, Friday evening, Friday morning everywhere else. If you don't have your Okta login set up, you will lose access to Periscope. You will not be able to log in the way you've traditionally logged in. So please get your Okta login situation sorted out before then. If you have questions, please ask in the Okta channel about Okta. If you have questions about Periscope, ask them in the data channel. I have the next thing too. FYI, this handbook MR that was merged changes GitLab's policy on the issue being updated in the issue description, not just in the comments. So the issue description should have the current state of any issue. I have the next one. I created this issue today. I have maintainer access to the data team repo, and I don't want it. I don't feel comfortable reviewing code for functionality where I don't have the business context there, and have merged code that was technically functional, but I think was the wrong strategic or business logic approach. And I without someone who can provide the appropriate business input, I don't really think that I feel comfortable as a maintainer. So I wanted to bring this up there because that would create Taylor as the only maintainer for the team, and that's a bottleneck. As I mentioned in the comments, would feel totally comfortable with being the emergency or backup reviewer or vacation periods, holidays, things like that, but generally would prefer to not have this responsibility on me.
How are you usually using this when you do?
People assign MRs to me to do code reviews and merge, and I do and go through the process, but I feel like I often lack the bigger picture goals. I'm reviewing for the technical accuracy of the code that's being delivered to me. Part of that is, sorry?
Not the overall context.
Yeah, part of that is because we, one, separate dashboard review from DBT code review. So it's not always clear what the goal of the DBT model changes are or why they're in place. And I just feel that without the appropriate context, there's a lot of room for me to merge something that shouldn't be.
Got it. So I'm wondering, like, it doesn't actually feel like I'm the right. So how many are? I'm curious when you talk about the what's the rate of these changes? Like how much what's the throughput we're talking about, and like what's generally are these daily changes that we're just making to things, or usually pieces of significance?
Are you asking for the team or that I'm reviewing specifically?
That you're reviewing. I guess I'm asking what are the implications of removing Emily from this seat right now?
I don't have the actual numbers. I'd have to pull them, but I'm going to guess somewhere between Probably an average of 5 MRs a week is a generous estimation.
Okay. I mean, I think the obvious answer here is data team manager, right? Which in lieu of that becomes de facto me right now. I would argue the opposite of the point you're making, and say like I lack any technical familiarity with what's going on to provide any valuable insight on that front. And I could ask the question of like, does this line up with the business pieces? But I'm not sure I'm there. So that's a long-term answer. On the short term, had you given any thought to what you thought needed to happen here, or what you thought should?
No.
Okay.
I have examples of MRs that I merged that I think had the wrong business logic, but I didn't review that because I reviewed the functionality of code. So I don't feel good when the work I do isn't good. That's part of the problem. Part of the problem too is that I feel like I have a lot on my plate, and this is this is a lot. It's a lot of pressure because it is the final merge. And I just don't feel like I have the context to okay things where I don't have, like, yes, I can review code functionally and I feel comfortable doing that. I don't feel comfortable doing that where I don't also have the bigger picture.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this in the context. I wish we hadn't lost Ben's, but I'm actually wondering is like, do we want business owner approval? The most obvious answer here, and it's I can't hear you either. Everyone got muted, I think.
I hear Eli. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I can hear Eli now.
I can hear you.
Sorry, I don't know what I was saying. I think I was saying it would be great if we actually just required business owner approval on these changes. Or I think in cases, like there's spots where I would expect where we're dealing with embedded analyst or fully aligned. Where I would
that is its own can of worms though, because do business owners do they know how to model data so that it's best presented for analysis?
Don't so much care about that, but they need to be able to have a conversation with the analyst who prepared it to say like, well, here's what it does. Is that what you want or didn't? And I do think the analyst needs to know what their code is doing. And if that thumbs up exists, then okay, if we feel comfortable the code does what we say it does, then we can go. That feels like a bit of a fix. As I'm saying it, I go like, well, actually, let's just make this change regardless of where things go, because I do want that business owner sign off on things. That feels like it makes sense to me. Yep.
I was going to mention, I just actually got off a call one-on-one with Chase, and this particular issue I'm working on, loss MRR. Chase, he's familiar enough with the data now to be able to look at it and say, hey, something doesn't look right, or maybe we need to think about this. He's an analyst, Chase is. So I think, definitely me bouncing stuff off of him and working through logic and making sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. I think I feel really comfortable about that with him. But then, kind of the technical nitty gritty of some of the stuff, he's kind of a little bit away from that. I don't think he's got plenty on his plate. So I think there I could still leverage our analytics resources. But in terms of saying, is this number right or not? Does this pass the sniff test? Is it doing what we want it to be doing? Is it showing what we want to be showing? I feel good about that with Chase, working with Chase with that. Just put that in there.
Okay.
Yeah, Walter, I would say I agree with you that having a data team manager would be the best solution to this. Like for me and Matthew, when we're reviewing each other's code, we can do a pretty good job knowing the context of what the other person is doing. And we can review all the functionality stuff. But then the way it is right now, we still need Taylor or Emily to merge it, and they do the final pass over, which is helpful. Like they'll catch things that Emily looked fine to me, but like Emily was saying, this is how we actually do things here. So it is useful to have that final pass, but it's not fair for Taylor and Emily to have that responsibility where it's not really part of their jobs to have to like merge everything. So I do appreciate the final review, but it is kind of like sometimes you want to merge quickly, or like you don't want to be like bothering them. So it's like
I will say, like, it is easier to pick up something from Eli or Matthew because I know that the other one has already reviewed it for the business problem. So I am at that point just reviewing the code, and I don't need to be worried about the rest of it. And I don't mind reviewing for the business problem. The problem is just that, like, the ask of reviewing for the functionality of code and the ask of reviewing for the functionality of code and the business problem, you triple the amount of work involved. And so I guess the first ask, the MVC ask, would be for the rest of the quarter, I would like to not review MRs because I have a big project on my plate and my time is limited. And the result of that is that Taylor would be the only person reviewing DBT MRs. If we're okay with that change, my proposal would be, let's reevaluate at the end of July, where maybe we will then have more information on how it worked out with just one maintainer, and two, maybe there's an update on the status of a manager.
I think that's good. I think we should also make the change of requiring a business stakeholder sign off, like whoever the owner is on the other side.
I don't know how that would be. I see that on the like dashboarding piece that we need buy-in. I don't know that there's any use in a business stakeholder signing off on a DBT model change, because like, what does that mean to them?
So in that case, is it the analyst signing off that they've verified it? Like, is that a smoother way to do it and say like, hey, we need some indicator or just assurance? I mean, I like to have a data point on something like that personally. But I'm fine with making the analyst accountable for having reviewed business context with relevant, like related owner. I don't know how we capture that in the MR. Can we just add a checkbox?
I mean, I was thinking, sorry. My answer would be that you should always have some business metric that you are matching to, whether that's MRR in the case of the dashboard Israel was working on today, or MAU for something Eli's working on. Like, you should always have whatever I call these toll paying metrics. They're the metrics that you use to confirm that you're headed in the right direction for your analysis. Like, you should check those and prove that your model matches those, whatever's in the UI. We can make that change. That is not a part of our process today.
I think adding that, it removes the burden of asking the question, or even being responsible for asking the question, or not knowing if it's out there if you're reviewing on the technical side. Knowing that is taken, like that is a requirement, those are table stakes for showing up, basically, at this point.
Okay, I'll take an action item to update our DBT, our MR template to reflect that. You need to have a North Star metric. You need to have it where it comes from in the UI, aka the numbers you're trying to match, and then the query from your development model that produces the same result.
Okay. Israel, would you mind also looking at that? Just because I think finance is a very good customer viewpoint for this. Sure,
and I think Emily's hitting the nail on the head with that. We'd always, kind of in my prior life, we'd always have executive reporting that's been validated, confirmed, one version of the truth, and anything else you did, you had to, if you could, tie it back to that number. And then, if you didn't have that option, then kind of one method we'd use. You kind of find your lowest level of detail and try to trace it through all your logic and see if you get the right number at the end, if stuff doesn't fall off. So I definitely think having those validation checks and putting them in, I think that makes a lot of sense. And what we need to do. I mean, it just has to happen.
Yep. Great. Thanks.
Yep.
So moving up the agenda, the next thing was Thomas's. I'll speak on his behalf because I have context here. This is, I think, a little bit more of an FYI than a discuss, but our connection to the .com databases and the other GitLab databases, version, which is where the ping comes from, and customers, has been down, and Infra has been busy with the GitLab.com performance issues, so he hasn't heard back. I think Dave Smith answered today, but this is just letting you know because we can't currently load that data.
Got it. It looks like David answered yesterday, so I don't know what the latest news is. And it looked like they were working on 7107 first for reasons. Still open. Oh God, Chef, not good.
That was the last thing on the agenda.
Company-wide KPIs depend on these databases. Emily, can you talk to me about that?
Yeah. So the MRs per developer per release, the okay, hold on. Sorry, I actually have to pull up the list. So that one, the days to merge, the marketing ones around community.
Does that cover all of our finance business partners areas of review?
I'm sorry?
I was wondering, like, does that covers several, it's covers Zach and...
Yeah, but it's not particularly a blocker for the KPIs because, excuse me, we don't report on current month metrics. We only report on completed month metrics.
Okay. So it's a long-term blocker probably, but right now it's not actually blocking your progress. Okay.
I think this is just an FYI that the connection's not reliable and stable yet, and just letting you know sooner rather than later.
Got it. So, I mean, I think, Emily, I'm about as concerned about this one as you are. Like, I'm happy to escalate and try and get engineering moving differently if that made sense. But I'm actually not inclined to try and do that if it's not blocking anything we consider particularly urgent right now.
I think that's best. Also, I think the things that infrastructure is working on is much, much more urgent.
Generally, they're pretty good about being in the hottest fires. Okay, cool.
That was everything that was on the agenda.
Awesome. In that case,
30 minutes.
anything else? 30 minutes back, that's a lot of saving. Cheers.